Welcome to Swing State. I'm your host, Fox 8 senior political reporter Bob Buckley, and tonight we have Anderson Clayton with us. She's the chairperson of the North Carolina Democratic Party. Let's go ahead and get it out of the way. Everyone meets you and says, oh my gosh, how can you be this young? Right? You get that all the time, I'm sure.
I do indeed, yes. I think that we're a lot younger than our other Democratic counterparts in other states. But
I think of probably almost anyone in any state who's running a party. I mean, how do you get that position? Let's go ahead and get that part out of the way too. People will say, how did she earn that at that age? What was your pitch?
Coming from rural North Carolina, I think is a big part of being able to make a pitch to the entire state about how, the Democratic Party's got a campaign in all 100 counties. We can't just cede ground anywhere to the Republican Party. And we have it this year. We're contesting 168 out of 170 state House and Senate seats across the state, which means that everybody across North Carolina is going to have somebody on their ballot that's a Democrat to vote for this year. We're really excited about it.
Did you peek at my rundown here?
No, I just, know what people need to hear across the state right now to say, hey, Democrats got a little fight back in them, don't they?
And we're going to talk about that, but before I get to that whole idea of having all 170 slots filled, to some degree both parties have had this issue, though. You mentioned how the Democratic Party needs to speak to rural North Carolina, which is more predominantly Republican, but the Republicans need to speak more to the urban sections of North Carolina as well, right? Don't we need parties that are parts of all of the state to be effective?
I think you need public servants that are willing to serve their communities the best. And that means that you have people that are willing to talk to anybody, that are willing to engage with anybody. And I tell folks this year about the Democratic Party, I don't care if you've got a Republican or an unaffiliated party identification beside your name. We want to talk to everybody because I don't think anyone is exactly happy with what's going on in Raleigh right now coming from the Republican Party. And I don't believe that everybody wants to go in and vote for Donald Trump again, who I think, quite frankly, would take this country backwards.
Well, it's interesting. It's not just that you might change their mind, but we all learn when we talk to people, right? Our views may evolve over time as well. All right, so as we mentioned, you will have a Democratic candidate in all 120 state House seats and all 50 Senate seats?
We will have 118 in our state House, and then all of our state Senate seats are contested
so
this year,
what was the challenge? Because we all know things get gerrymandered heavily. How difficult was it to get some people in some of the more challenging districts to step up and run, and what's the value of that?
Well, the cool thing this year is that the state party had a really great opportunity to work hand in hand with both our House Democratic caucus and our House Democratic Senate caucus to make sure that both of our two counterparts were also going out to these communities and engaging with folks for the first time and saying, we need you to step up and run for office. So Representative Vernetta Alston, who is based out of Durham County, went out to places like Cherokee County and talked to folks out there about running for office and that we needed to hold Republicans accountable. And so it ended up when we've got folks that, Phil Berger, I like to talk about him a lot because he actually has gone unopposed a few times in the last couple of election cycles. And this year we've got a great person running against him out of Rockingham County, Dr. Steve Luking, who's been a practicing family physician there for the last 20 years and going up against the guy that almost cost 600,000 people health insurance in North Carolina, being a practicing doctor in that community. He's going to have a really good case to make, I think, even though that's a gerrymandered seat, just dead set for Phil Berger.
Well, but Berger, to be fair, he did get that over the line.
To be fair, waited 3 months and said, and also had a couple of representatives out of Forsyth County up here in this neck of the woods too that also said it was okay for people to have to wait until December or January of 2024 to get health insurance when they could have had it in September, October. Actually, they could have had it a decade ago, right? If they had gotten their act together. Medicaid expansion's been on the table for a long time.
Well, it was a big part of what the Affordable Care Act was all about. The Republicans here, their argument was, let's see how it works, and they went to school on some of the states who did it early and made some mistakes, and they feel like they did it better. Now we
lost money, and that's what I care about, Bob Buckley, to be honest with you, is that the state of North Carolina tax dollars that we were paying into that program, honestly, went to other places instead of coming back here.
All right.
That's what Republicans cost us.
Can the Democrats take back the state House and the Senate?
No, because we have gerrymandered maps that Republicans have single-handedly put into play. They've drawn themselves into a majority. They have not drawn themselves into a supermajority. And so the Democratic Party this year, our goal is to make sure that Josh Stein becomes the next governor of North Carolina and ensure that we have a broken supermajority in our state House and our state Senate to ensure that he's got veto-proof power.
And you feel pretty confident you can accomplish that?
We do, because we have great competitive races across the state and we have great candidates across the state that we are running this year.
What are the numbers? How many House seats and Senate seats do you need to pick up? Just a couple, right?
Yes, I mean, we're in a one-seat minority right now, or super minority in our state house, thanks to the representative out of Mecklenburg County,
Yep.
Tricia Cotham, when she switched parties last year and cost people across North Carolina their access to health care as well in that sense. Man, Republicans really do enjoy taking away people's health care, don't they? Or keeping it from them.
Well, we will ask them about that when they get on here, and we do when they get on here.
Yeah.
How do you see the major races turning out this year? I mean, the governor's race, Josh Stein, has taken a lead in recent polls.
Well, I don't ride the polar coaster, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think that we always need to run a race like we're 7 points down, and that means that Josh Stein is getting out to places like Transylvania County and Jackson County and Dare County and making sure that all over North Carolina is hearing the message of an economic message for rural North Carolina this year.
I think the second biggest office in a lot of ways in the state is Attorney General. How does that race looking? Because Jeff Jackson is your nominee.
Yes, sir.
Right, and Republicans still have a runoff to take care of. How's that one look? I mean, what are you seeing on the inside?
Well, no, the lieutenant governor's race has
That's right, the lieutenant
the
governor.
primary right
That's
now
right,
for
yeah.
Hal Weatherman and the other
Jim
person.
O'Neill.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing in the attorney general's race is that Dan Bishop is the nominee for the attorney general's
Right,
race on the
right.
Republican side,
That's right,
right?
that's right.
And I like to call him bad for business Bishop because again, Republicans like to cost our economy something here in North Carolina from when he was the author of the bathroom bill in HB2, right? That passed in 2016 that cost our state almost $3 billion in revenue, taking away like the NBA championship game out of North Carolina, costing us, especially the eastern part of the state.
NBA
right?
All-Star game? you mean?
All-Star game.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I'd love to see the Hornets in the championship game.
I mean, I'd love to see Republicans take seriously that sort of office and what Dan Bishop represents in that case. I don't know how anybody wants to run to be Attorney General when that's supposed to be an office that protects every person in North Carolina for someone that obviously hates at least a portion of North Carolinians.
Let's be careful about putting hate in someone's heart or mind.
I mean, a bill that persecutes people like that, though, I would imagine no one needs to be able to say that they're going to represent folks like that. Whereas
Right.
you've seen a congressman.
You can say he may not represent everyone, but to say the hate is a little.
I take
let's
your disagreement, Bob
Okay.
Buckley, on that
All
one.
right. Fair enough. We just heard what the state Democratic Party will focus on if they win majority. So what are the voters saying? We'll take a look at those issues next. Welcome back to Swing State. Tonight we are talking with Anderson Clayton, who for the last 2 years has been the chairperson of the North Carolina Democratic Party. That's right, 2 years?
About a year and some change, honestly.
Okay. Pretty close to 2 years, though. Before we get into some of the exact issues, it does seem like North Carolina likes split government. We've only had the same party in charge of both the General Assembly and the Governor's Mansion for 6 of the last 44 years, and only had the same party in charge of the General Assembly, the Governor, and Attorney General's office for 2 of the last 44 years. And I know this is the past, and you're focused on the future, but still, how does that strike you? Does that say anything to you?
I mean, you know what says something to me
What's that?
is that the fact that, a Republican Supreme Court, when they got elected in 2023, repealed a decision that the former Democratic court had made to legalize partisan and racial gerrymandering again, right? And when that did that, they allowed for our state House and our state Senate to redraw our congressional district maps that were formerly drawn by independent, special masters came in and drew our congressional district maps in 2022 when that previous court decision came down. And what that previous court decision had said, or what those master maps had drawn, right, was a 7-7 split for North Carolina congressionally right now.
Right.
7 Democrats, 7 Republicans representing us in Congress, because North Carolina, to your point, right, is an evenly split state when it comes to
That vote is
the
always
gerrymandering.
between 52-54% for one party or the
Exactly.
other.
And what we've seen now is a Supreme Court that's allowed our state legislature to redraw those maps and take us to being a 10, potentially to 4, Republican to Democratic minority right now. And that's because that they've had the opportunity to unfairly draw maps.
You know what's happened in some states, though, and actually it was the Democratic Party in both these states that did it. New York and Maryland, they did the same thing. They had an independent commission. The commission drew up a set of maps, and the party said, you know what, we don't like that, we're not going to follow that commission. So people kind of lose faith when the commissions are set up and the governments don't follow them.
Well, do you think that was right for them to do that then?
It's not my position to take whether it's right or not.
I mean,
I'm the
you're
person who
a
asks the
voter though, Bob. You should have an opinion on that, right?
well,
And I think that I do too.
yeah.
I don't think that was right.
Yeah.
I think that independent or commissions, right,
Yeah.
should draw those maps, because I believe that if Democrats had fair maps right now, we would, to your question earlier, be
Yeah.
able to actually take a state house chamber back this year.
Yeah, and the challenge becomes the law says it is the General Assembly's responsibility to draw those maps. It doesn't say it's their responsibility to draw them evenly.
So you're saying it's okay for the General
I'm saying-
Assembly to draw unfair maps?
I'm saying the law does not tell them they can't.
Well, I would say to make sure that voters
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
have equal representation and fair representation, that following the law would mean that you would want people to have an opportunity to actually elect their representatives. I think that's what democracy and what this country was
For
founded
years, the elected representatives choose their constituents versus the other way around. That's been going on, as you point out, for decades.
on. And it shouldn't be.
All right, fair enough. Some top voter priorities. Take a look at some of these. So strengthening the economy is number one, 73%. Defending against terrorism, 63%. That, I'm sure, is something that ebbs and flows with what's going on in the world. Reducing influence and money in politics, 62%. And then a whole bunch clustered at 60. Reducing healthcare costs, improving education, making Social Security financially sound. And then just below that, reducing crime. And then dealing with immigration overall, actually pretty low, 57%. How do your candidates stack up on all these? And how do you see the party pushing some of these maybe versus others?
I mean, I think that you've heard it from us that the best way to strengthen your economy is through your public education system, and it's through your higher education system. And that's how North Carolina has become such a foundation, right, for folks across the country to know who we are as a state is our identity in education. And that automatically helps strengthen your economy. It also looks to the fact that when you're thinking about reducing healthcare costs and improving education in that, making Social Security financially sound, making sure that we've got Medicaid expansion in the state that Democrats have fought for forever.
Which we have
is a part
now.
of that,
We
right?
have now.
We do, but I mean, I think that that's a part of what the platform is. Like Democrats this year are going to go across our state and talk about healthcare, jobs, and education because it's what's made North Carolina the state that it is today, the number one in business that
Right.
folks like to tout.
And the Republicans will say, we had Senator Tillis in here last week, and he had said that one of the things that will get the economy nationally going is getting rid of a lot of the regulations that have come in under the Biden administration. The Republicans will claim that part of North Carolina's economic success is they've kept regulations from being overly burdensome. Is that not part of the success of the state?
No, I don't believe that we need to deregulate. I think
No,
if
they're just saying we have enough. We don't necessarily need a lot more. And you were saying what has made the economy good in the state is education and healthcare. What did you mentioned? Three things.
healthcare, jobs, and education.
All right. To what isn't, though, the fact that the state, according to the Republicans, has not been overly regulated because they've been in charge, has played into this?
They were in charge for the last 10 years. What I'm talking about was created in the last 40 when
Right.
Democrats were in charge of the state. The research triangle didn't just come up over the last decade.
Sure.
It was something that was installed. You know, the fact that we had the prime minister of Japan was just in the United States, right, a few weeks ago. The fact that he
North
only
Carolina.
came to two places, right, is because of the Governor Jim Hunt going overseas and looking at the prime minister then and saying, what's it going to take for you to get to invest in North Carolina? Democrats have been the only party in this state that have had an economic vision for how we get North Carolina out of what we used to be labeled as, which was the Rip Van Winkle state, right? We were asleep at the wheel and we didn't have control over where our state was headed in a lot of directions. We once looked like Mississippi, but it was because of Democrats that brought us back from that. And right now, what are Republicans offering to us? They have majority control over this state. They have every ability, to your point, right? The state legislature could do anything right now because Republicans are in charge of it.
Yeah.
And what are they giving us?
I'm not here to be their spokesperson.
No, I
so
know that, Bob.
I don't know
I'm
if
just saying. I'm making a case right now, right, to my
Right.
people in good old High Point and surrounding areas, to be honest
Yeah.
with you.
And we may not be able to get through all these in the time we have in this particular segment. It may bleed into the third segment, but where the parties have the greatest divergence is interesting too, and climate change is the biggest one. Democrats see it as a huge issue, 59%, Republicans 12%. Protecting the environment, Democrats 63%, Republicans 23%. Dealing with immigration, Republicans are big on that, of course, 76% to Democrats only 39%. Strengthening the military, GOP say 56% say that's really important, Democrats say 23%. addressing issues around race, Democrats come back again as the majority there, 47-14. Does that speak to you at all, those numbers? Is that something that you experience as you go around the state talking to people from both parties? Because you mentioned you have.
I think that people that are concerned with immigration right now should be concerned that Republicans didn't want to pass the immigration bill that just came through Congress, right? They are making this a very political issue this year when we have presented a good case to be made that there's legislation on the floor that they could take up at any time.
And I challenged Senator Tillis on this last week, and I said I read through the bill Kathy Manning had a lot to do with putting together, and he said the challenge became in the details. There was very little enforcement in that bill. He claimed that it didn't. It looked good on the surface, but when you dug into the details, he said that it wasn't something that he could vote for.
Well, I'd say the same thing with private school voucher scams in North Carolina right now, so, you know.
How's that, I mean, that connected to?
It's not. It's just to make a joke about it, to be real with you. That, you know, it
I gotta work on my sense of humor.
looks good on the surface,
I
right?
see
But a
what you
little
mean.
bit of in the center, you
All
know.
right. Well, we're going to have to bleep that one there because we don't use that word on TV.
Apologies, Bob Buckley.
That's all right. President Biden came very close to winning North Carolina in 2020, and he'll be counting on tonight's guest to help him get over the line this year. We'll talk national and presidential politics next. Welcome back to Swing State. Tonight we're talking with Anderson Clayton. She is the chairperson of the Democratic Party, and we've had a lively discussion, I will call it so far. A couple more fun things to get through. The Progressive Policy Institute asked which party most represents the interests of the wealthy, and Republicans, the interviewee said Republicans by 41 to 31% are more interested, represent the wealthy. The 2020 election, voters with college degrees or more voted for President Biden by 24%. President Trump had an advantage in people without bachelor's degrees. It was kind of an interesting dichotomy by, you know, who you think the party supports, but who is in that party. And when asked which president in recent decades has done the most for average working families, according to the Progressive Policy Institute, 44% said Trump and 12% said Biden. I thought that was interesting, as well as 24 of the 25 wealthiest congressional districts are represented by Democrats. 2/3 of the districts below the national median income are represented by Republicans. A lot of data to get through there, but what do you make of that? Anything?
I mean, I think that right now the Democratic Party is the party of the working class. Like, we are the party that's trying to create a union economy that represents everyone. And in North Carolina, where you still have right to work laws in play, and $7.25 for a minimum wage that we're stuck at the state legislative level, and most young people right now work service jobs, right? So they are working for that. And I think that so many folks don't understand that Biden's economy is actually like sort of fighting with our state government in a lot of ways, and on how it's sort of enabled to come into our state in so many ways.
Well, I would say President Biden is indeed the most pro-union president I have seen in my lifetime. But it is interesting that you look at all the data, and the Democratic Party over the last 30 years has shifted to be the party of people with advanced degrees and college educations and wealthy. Much more so, the Republicans have become much more the party of, you look at the registration.
Donald Trump's not a millionaire? Like,
I didn't say it's exclusive.
I mean, like, who represents that party, though? And also, like, look at the people that are in our state legislature right now and how much money they make to be. Do you know that right now the Republican majority, a state legislature, fun fact for all our viewers out there listening to this, because I don't think many people know it, a state legislator in North Carolina makes $13,000 a year, right? If they take their per diem every single day, right, Bob Buckley, if they strip that thing down to whatever they could, it's around $33,000 that they actually get for being a state legislator.
Right.
No one in this state right now.
It's supposed to be a part-time job.
It's supposed to be a part-time job. It is not a part-time job when you look at how often they are in Raleigh, though. Would you not say that? I mean, y'all cover it every day here and every session that they have.
I don't know if I'd call it a full-time job, but you have to have a job that you can work at your own pace.
Exactly. And what type of folks would you say are allowed to do that in, right?
I'm
Lawyers,
guessing you have an
doctors,
answer,
you know, I think that people that are of a more upper class or sort of a higher level, you make six
Insurance
figures
salesman,
at least, right? Or you're independently wealthy.
Yeah.
And so right now, Republicans any day in the state legislature could change that if they wanted to and say, we're actually going to have a full, citizen legislature and make sure that it's a full-time legislature instead of a citizen legislature, and making it something that actually a working person could represent people in North Carolina right now. But they can't.
The argument against that from some has been they don't want careerism like we see in Congress.
Well,
they don't
then
want
put
people
term
there
limits in
60
there too.
years.
They could do that as well right now.
That has been challenged sometimes constitutionally. Now, I don't know if the state constitution would, but federally, It has.
But we're at the state level right now,
Okay.
right?
For that particular discussion, we are.
Yes,
so
sir.
what's been your role in communication with President Biden and his team? You've been talking to them?
Yes, sir. We have a very close and coordinated campaign right now that's coming into North Carolina strong. We just onboarded 4 organizers last week, and so folks that are looking for this campaign and looking for ways to get involved can go to ncdp.org and make sure that they're volunteering with the campaign and signing up, because we're out knocking doors every weekend across the state.
And what can you tell me, too, about the way you're going to coordinate and maybe do something differently if you are from 2020? Most Republicans I talk to lament that the Democrats just run rings around them with the get out the vote part of their party.
Well, I mean, I think that's the early investment. Right now, you don't see any sort of investment from the Republican Party in terms of a GOTV effort, and you do see it from the Biden campaign. They've organized and opened up 10 offices across the state. They've been able to make sure that they have people represented in these communities that are their spokesperson. We're going out into these communities every single weekend. I mean, we've had, from the state party level, our Project 100 team alone has done 37 canvas launches. We've got 29 more scheduled, and we're hoping to be organizing in every county.
And we'll be seeing the president here fairly regularly, you think, or the vice president? Maybe
We already
both?
have, honestly,
a
Bob
couple
Buckley,
times,
right?
yeah.
The vice president has been here 12 times, and she's been vice president. And also, we've seen the president in state. At least I've been to his events at least 4 times by now since the start of the year.
Yet Republicans have won North Carolina in 12 of the last 14 presidential elections dating back to 1964, and in every one of those, Democrats have had more registered voters than Republicans. So how do we explain that?
I mean, I think it's energy. You know, Democrats, there's that saying that Republicans fall in line, Democrats have got to fall in love, and we got to make sure that everybody falls in love this year in a lot of ways with everybody on our candidate slate. You know, we have 15 people that are running statewide in North Carolina for the Democratic Party. A lot of folks, I think, forget the fact that it's not just the president that you're voting for this year. It's 10 positions on the Council of State that don't just include the governor's office, right? It is, to your point earlier, the attorney general, the lieutenant governor, our state treasurer, our state auditor, our commissioner of agriculture, right? And I'd love to see Sarah Tabor end up being our commissioner of agriculture this year, someone that's managed to, I think, really put a spotlight on farmers that are struggling across North Carolina, especially in eastern North Carolina.
How do we learn more about those down? Because a lot of people, they get to that point of the ballot and they say, I just don't know anything about these people. How do we learn about them?
Yeah, you go to candidates.ncdp.org and you're able to see a slate of the Democratic candidates that are running this year, their resumes. The thing that I like to tell people the best about Council of State this year, Republicans have nominated the most extreme and the most partisan Council of State candidates that we've ever seen in the state's history. From when you're looking at Mark Robinson to Dan Bishop to Michelle Morrow, right, who said she would like to see the public execution of President Barack Obama and Governor Roy Cooper live streamed on television, right? That is who the Republicans have versus who the Democratic Party is offering, which is our current Attorney General right now, who's been the current Attorney General for the last 8 years, and going down ticket to Congressman Jeff Jackson, to Braxton Winston, and everyone else down ballot too.
Just a couple seconds left. Where's your future in politics? Where are you going after this?
I'm hopefully going to help us win this state this year. That's what I'm looking at.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Well, that is it for tonight. Please tune in or set your DVR to record Swing State each week to get the kind of in-depth look at issues that shape your community. See you next time.